All right, let's jump right in today. We're diving deep, like really deep into the early days of Microsoft.
Oh, exciting.
Using, you guessed it, Bill Gates' own words. It's one thing to know about Microsoft as this, tech giant, but it's a whole other thing to hear it straight from the source, those early
Yeah,
years.
you're right. This period, like around the mid 70s, it's kind of like witnessing a tech revolution in real time.
Oh, absolutely. Like their story starts with this Business Week article from 1976. They called MI the company behind the Altair computer, the
IBM of home computers.
IBM of home computers. Exactly. Can you imagine?
That was a bold statement. I mean, IBM back then was like the gold standard, the name
Yeah.
everyone trusted.
Yeah. And that comparison, I mean, it created this huge buzz around MIs, right? Orders were pouring and they must have been ecstatic.
Oh, definitely. But even back then, even amidst all the hype, Bill Gates, he saw the cracks. He knew that relying solely on Mites was a risky game, especially with bigger companies like Texas Instruments sniffing around the PC market.
And it wasn't just that. Microsoft's early days were like a constant hustle. Imagine this, Bill Gates was too young to even rent a car for business meetings. They were operating on a shoestring budget, scrambling for every client.
Yeah, talk about scrappy. But that's what fueled their innovation. They had this raw energy, this drive to make something out of nothing. And that led to this kind of clear division of roles. You had Bill Gates, the visionary, Paul Allen, the coding genius, and Rick Weiland handling the day-to-day stuff.
And they weren't afraid to have fun with it either, like those nicknames they gave themselves. The President, the Veep. It's like a mix of ambition and youthful, playfulness.
Right. I love that detail about Rick Weiland's license plate. Yes, I am. It says a lot about his own journey during that crazy time.
It does. But behind the scenes, there's also this tension, this almost palpable pressure. Bill Gates was known for being demanding, pushing everyone hard, but you could also tell he cared deeply for his friends and employees.
Yeah, that's fascinating, right? It speaks to his personality, but also his loyalty. He wanted success, but he also wanted the people around him to succeed alongside him. But then, things got even more complicated. Their relationship with Mites, it started to unravel. Disagreements over royalties, licensing. It got messy.
Yeah, and Bill Gates had this best efforts clause in their contract, which meant Mites actually had to try and sell Microsoft's software. Looking back, it was a genius move. Foreshadowing, almost.
Oh, totally. A best efforts clause is basically saying, hey, you can't just sit on your hands here. You have to actively promote our product. Bill Gates was thinking ahead, anticipating potential conflicts. He knew that the success of their software depended on Mites putting in the effort.
And then, to make matters worse, Mites got acquired by this much larger company called Pertec.
Yeah, Pertec. Suddenly Microsoft was the unwanted stepchild.
Exactly. And it wasn't just business, it felt personal. They were being sidelined, their future suddenly uncertain. Then came the confrontation with Pertec's lawyers.
Ooh, this is where the story gets really intense. He was like a scene straight out of a movie.
Right. They threatened to destroy Microsoft, hold Bill Gates personally liable. It was a David versus Goliath situation. Their entire future hanging in the balance.
Talk about pressure. But they didn't back down.
They didn't. They fought back. And they won. That arbitration case against MIT, it was monumental. Not just for them, but for the entire software industry.
Absolutely. It set a precedent for software ownership. Imagine if they'd lost. The landscape of technology could be totally different today.
No doubt. And this win, it opened up so many doors for them. They got deals with Commodore, Texas Instruments, even this new company, Apple. Suddenly, they were players, a force to be reckoned with in this whole new world of personal computers.
It's amazing to think that all of this was happening while they were still working primarily with BASIC, a language considered pretty basic, no pun intended, at the time.
Yeah, right. But, BASIC was actually key to the PC boom. It allowed everyday people to learn coding, to create. It made computers accessible, not just for engineers or scientists, and that was huge.
Totally. And speaking of those early PCs, did you hear about the Microsoft Easter egg hidden in the Commodore PET's BASIC? A little playful jab at the competition. But it shows that this wasn't just about business. It was about passion, about these guys having a vision.
Yeah, it was about pushing boundaries, about shaping the future of computing. And as Microsoft was on this upward trajectory, Bill Gates, he faced a life-altering decision.
Leaving Harvard.
Leaving Harvard to devote himself completely to Microsoft. It wasn't just business. It was about believing in his vision, betting on himself, and ultimately on the future of Microsoft. And along with that came the negotiation with Paul Allen for a larger share of the company. A bold move that showed just how much he believed in what they were building.
It takes guts to walk away from something like Harvard. But Bill Gates, he saw the potential, And he was willing to risk it all. And that conviction, that unwavering belief, it would become a defining characteristic of his leadership.
And that's where we'll pick things up next time. The story of Microsoft, their move to Seattle, the rise of the IBM PC, and the complex dynamics that shaped their journey to becoming the tech giant we know today.
Stay tuned, folks. It's about to get even more interesting.
So they'd broken free from Emites, right? They'd
Yeah.
proven they could stand on their own. They had those deals with companies like Commodore and Texas Instruments, Apple even. But to really make it big...
They needed someone like Tandy.
Tandy, exactly. The parent company of Radio Shack, no less.
Huge. Think about it. This is before Silicon Valley became like the tech hub. Microsoft, they were operating out of Albuquerque, New Mexico.
New Mexico, talk about an underdog story.
It is, isn't it? Building an empire in a place no one expected.
And maybe that distance from Silicon Valley, maybe that was a good thing in a way?
Oh, how so?
Well, they were kind of under the radar, right? Developing their software, building their team, without all the crazy pressure and competition of the Valley.
You know, you've got a point. It let them cultivate their own unique style, focus on their vision. But even without the Silicon Valley chaos, they still faced those growing pains, those challenges that come with, expanding, hiring new people, juggling bigger contracts, tougher decisions.
And all this while essentially being run by a group of friends, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable when you think about it. And this is where I think we start to see some of that tension, that friction between Bill Gates and Paul Allen begin to surface.
Oh, absolutely. Bill Gates, he was getting more and more into the business side of things, the strategy, while Paul Allen, he remained, the tech guy at heart, the coding, the building.
It's a classic story almost. You've got the leader obsessed with pushing the company forward and the technical genius, the heart and soul of the product. And as things grow, those perspectives, well, they can clash.
Yeah, it's like they were speaking different languages, right? Bill Gates, he was thinking about market share, partnerships, the long game. Paul Allen, he was still driven by that passion for building great software.
Exactly. And that difference, it led to friction, especially when it came to making big decisions.
Bill Gates, he wanted control. He felt responsible for the company's success, and he wanted to ensure everyone was on board with his vision.
It makes sense in a way, right? The personal computer industry was still so new. No one knew what the future held. There was so much uncertainty. Bill Gates, he was trying to steer the ship through uncharted waters, and that took a certain, decisiveness.
Yeah, he wasn't just coding. He was building a company that could adapt, that could thrive. It required a different kind of thinking, a bigger picture perspective that maybe Paul Allen wasn't as focused on.
And let's not forget they were both so young. Bill Gates, he was barely in his 20s, Paul Allen just a bit older. They were learning on the fly, making it up as they went along. That kind of pressure, that uncertainty, it can put a strain on any relationship.
And amidst all of this, they decide to move Microsoft to Seattle.
Seattle. Why the sudden change?
It was a mix of things, really. They needed more talent, skilled programmers, which Seattle had, and Paul Allen, he wanted to be closer to his family.
Ah, so a practical decision and a personal one.
Exactly. But it was also a homecoming of sorts. Back to their roots.
I like that. A fresh start.
It was. They built a new headquarters, established a more permanent base, and it's in Seattle, I think, that they really start to lay the foundation for the Microsoft we know today.
Still growing, still facing challenges, but definitely a force to be reckoned with.
But their journey, it's far from over. The 1980s, well, that's a whole other story. New challenges, new rivals, and the biggest test yet, IBM entering the PC market.
The game is about to change.
We've seen Microsoft go from this tiny startup to a major player in the PC world, but as we hit the 80s, things really start to heat up.
Yeah, the landscape was changing fast. Those early PCs from Commodore, Apple, Radio Shack, they proved that personal computers were here to stay. They weren't just a fad anymore.
Right. But the market, it was still wide open. Anyone could come in and shake things up.
And that's exactly what happened. IBM, a giant in the tech world, they launched their own PC in 1981, and it sent shockwaves through the entire industry.
It's like the king of the mainframe. The big corporate computers suddenly decided to play in the personal computer sandbox.
Exactly, and everyone was watching, wondering what would happen next.
And this is where Bill Gates, he really shows his strategic genius. Instead of trying to compete with IBM on hardware, he focused on what Microsoft did best, software.
He made a deal to supply the operating system for the IBM PC, a move that would change everything.
MS-DOS, it became the foundation for an empire. It was brilliant. Instead of fighting IBM, he partnered with them.
And by providing the operating system for the IBM PC, Microsoft essentially became the gatekeeper for the whole ecosystem.
It's like they built them all and everyone else wanted to set up shop inside.
Exactly, a classic platform strategy. And as more and more companies started building IBM-compatible PCs, they all needed an operating system, and MS-DOS was the obvious choice.
It's like a snowball effect, right? The more popular MS-DOS became, the more developers created software for it, and the more valuable the platform became.
And it wasn't just MS-DOS. Microsoft was also developing other key software products like Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. These became essential tools for businesses and individuals alike.
They were building a whole ecosystem, a suite of products that were becoming indispensable for anyone using a personal computer.
And all of this was happening at a time when the PC market was exploding. Personal computers were no longer just for hobbyists. They were becoming essential for everyone.
It was the perfect storm, and Microsoft was riding the wave. They had the operating system, they had the applications, and they had a growing reputation for quality and innovation.
And they weren't afraid to take risks, to push the boundaries of what was possible with personal computing. They were constantly experimenting, developing new products, refining existing ones.
But all the success, it came at a cost. The tension between Bill Gates and Paul Allen, it reached a breaking point.
Yeah, their priorities, their approaches to work, they were just too different.
And in 1983, Paul Allen made the tough decision to leave Microsoft, a huge loss for the company, but also a turning point.
Bill Gates was now firmly in control, ready to lead Microsoft into its next chapter.
And what a chapter it would be. Throughout the 80s and 90s, Microsoft became a global powerhouse. Their software was everywhere, used by billions of people.
They dominated the operating system market. They were a major force in the application software market, and they were constantly expanding into new areas like video games and the internet.
It's a truly remarkable story. It all started with a couple of friends tinkering with computers, and it turned into one of the most influential companies in history.
It's a story that shows what's possible with a bit of talent, a lot of hard work, and maybe a little bit of luck.
It's a story that reminds us that the future is full of possibilities and that even the most audacious dreams can be achieved. And as we wrap up our deep dive into the early days of Microsoft, I think it's important to remember that this is just the beginning.
The story of Microsoft is still being written, and it'll be fascinating to see what the future holds.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe somewhere out there right now, there's another couple of friends tinkering away in a garage getting ready to change the world.
The possibility